Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's hearing. Today we're going to hear more evidence from Mr. Carl Stokes. So would you ask Mr. Carl Stokes to come back in, please? Good morning, Mr. Stokes.
Good morning, sir.
Ready to carry on?
Yes, sir.
Good. Thank you very much. Mr. Phillip, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, and good morning to members of the panel. Mr. Stokes, good morning to you. I'd like to turn now, please, to the question of the fire control switch. Can we please go to your first statement, CST 403063, page 44. Paragraph 127 on that page, towards the foot of the page, and you say there, it has been queried whether the lifts installed at the tower can rightly be described as firefighting lifts, etc. And then you go on to say in the middle of the paragraph, at no point was I given to understand that the primary function of a firefighting lift, i.e. the ability for the fire service to control the lift, was impaired on all occasions when attending the tower, I observed the firefighter override drop key switch, which sat in between the two lifts. See further paragraph 129 below. Exava's fire strategy document of November 2013, which also described them as firefighting lifts. Now, can we go, please, first to some handwritten notes that you wrote on your October 2014 significant action plan during your April 2016 FRA visit? We'll find those at CST 702, please. Just to confirm for us, these are your handwritten notes, aren't they?
Correct.
Now, if you go, please, to page 15 in this document run and look at point 2, it says there, next to the figure 2, no FF switch. You see that?
Correct.
What does no FF switch indicate?
Firefighter switch.
Right. And if you look at number 1 above it, what does that say? Can you read that out for us?
No firefighter switch main entrance door.
Well, it doesn't say no.
Firefighter switch main entrance door.
Main entrance door, I see. And then 2, no firefighter switch.
Yes, inner door.
Inner doors. And then how do you access this door?
Yes.
Right, I see. Has that anything to do with the firefighter switch at the lifts?
No, these are the override switch for access to the building and the doors next to them.
I see. Nonetheless, did you realise that the fire control switch installed at Grenfell Tower was not compliant with BSEN 8172 of 2003 in that it was operable with a drop key rather than a triangular key as required by the standards?
Because it wouldn't comply with that standard because it's not a new lift. It would have complied with the old standard, which was compliant.
Is that why you never raised that question with anybody?
Correct, because it's not a EN 81 lift, 82 lift.
Can we go back to your statement, please, page 44? Sorry, I'm so sorry. Your second witness statement at page 34, that's CST 303186, page 34, paragraph 127. And you say there, I would not have checked the actual operation of a fire switch on the day of my FRA, but would have made sure that there were records of monthly inspections of the lifts by competent lift engineers selected by KCTMO. I would have expected those inspections to have included checking that whether or not the fire switch worked. I also understood that this would have been checked by ESAs and should have in any event been checked by the LFB during their visits. Why did you not check it for yourself?
Because, well, first of all, it's only visual. I wouldn't check that the function of the lift. I would doubt whether my insurance would cover me if I damaged it or anything like that. Well, and it's being checked by a competent person who is a third party on contract and maintenance contract with the TMO to undertake that function for them.
I see. So I'm getting from that answer the idea that you wouldn't actually try to operate any of the machinery or active or passive fire safety measures in the building. Yours would be an entirely documentary exercise.
Correct, visual.
Visual.
Visual on documentary, so
Right.
checking up.
That explains why you didn't test it.
Correct.
I see. Were you aware, or were you made aware of the LFB having previously reported an issue with the fire control switch during the fire at the Grenfell Tower site in April 2010, or in the tower, in fact, in April 2010?
2010?
Yes.
I might have been, but there's been since then, I know that they had undertaken exercises there and it worked all okay. And also the maintenance company would have highlighted this, along with the monthly checks would have highlighted if it had not worked correctly. Was it operator error?
Did you ever actually witness somebody operating the fire control switch yourself?
Yes.
When was that?
At a meeting or a visit to the tower with some LFB, and they actually operated the lift and went through all the procedures.
Yes, when was that?
Sorry, I can't tell you the date.
Was that part of the 2016 FRA visits or earlier than that?
It was an exercise, I believe.
Right. And can you describe what you saw on that occasion?
The LFB actually taking control of the lift.
By using the drop key?
Yes.
And it worked, did it?
Yes.
I want just to ask you then about maintenance, because you refer to records. Can we please go to your statement, no, your letter of the 27th of September 2010, CST 403061, please, page 4. And on page 4, you see there's a list of items that were discussed. And at item 6, it says, annual comprehensive servicing and maintenance contract is in place for all lifts. This includes monthly inspections. 7, TMO employs a dedicated lift engineer who is responsible for the supervision and monitoring of the contract stroke contractors. 8, the council's insurers carry out 6 monthly inspections, which include a full safety check. 9, estate staff, caretakers, porters, inspectors and neighbourhood officers carry out regular estate inspections, which include visual inspection of the lift car and testing of the lift alarm. Now, after your meeting with Janice Ray on the 24th of September 2010, which is the time when this letter was written, did you ever receive any updated information about the maintenance of the lifts?
I believe the lift maintenance company changed. I'm going to go from Apex to another company in the 7-year period.
Right. Do you remember when that was, roughly?
No, sorry. But I understood that the contract and maintenance and everything was the same.
Now, Robin Callan retired in 2012. Did you receive any updated information about the maintenance of the lifts at that stage?
I knew that the lift engineers were the department that they worked for, and all the lift engineers were going, but everything was staying in place. So there were still monthly inspections. The caretakers were still undertaking call button testing of the lifts as part of their routine, and the insurance and maintenance contracts were still all in place.
What I've read to you, items 6 to 9 on that page, are part of a run of details about the lifts which we looked at yesterday. Is it the case that what you recorded here in these paragraph numbers in this 27th of September 2010 letter always remained your understanding of the maintenance and testing regime across the whole of the TMO stock?
Correct. The only one is that the lift engineer department was actually not in being anymore. So there was no dedicated lift engineer as such.
And when the lift engineer department ceased to be, did you get any updated information about what was going to happen next with regard to the maintenance programme?
It was undertaken by repairs and maintenance. It was being overseen by them.
Did you get any information yourself about what they were going to be doing?
staying the same as far as that would be the information. Everything stayed the same.
Yes. What I'm really trying to get at is, do you remember receiving any new information about how the maintenance programme was going to be conducted from that point on?
No, because the maintenance programme would have stayed the same.
Now, in section 23 of all of your FRAs, you included, and I'll show you one example, some text about the maintenance of the lifts, don't you?
Yes.
Yes. Let's use the April 2016 FRA as an example. CST 403161, page 31, please. And if we look at the fourth question down, you can see that there's the standard question, monthly inspections of switches and annual testing of the firefighting / evacuation lifts with records kept. And on this occasion, you've ticked it yes.
Correct.
Now, if you look at PAS 79 2012 edition at CTA 703, page 94, please. CTA 703, page 94, you can see the template here, which, of course, is informative and not normative, as we know. But it says here that the responsible person should be carrying out weekly and monthly testing. If you look at 27.7, we need to scroll down to the bottom. I'm so sorry. Scroll down to the bottom of the page. You can see 27.7, weekly and monthly testing, 6 monthly inspection, and annual testing of firefighting lifts. You see that?
Yes.
I'm just focusing on weekly or monthly testing and 6 monthly inspection. Why did you amend the question in your FRA pro forma so as to exclude weekly testing?
My understanding is it is regular testing in the British Standard. Documentation regular is no time scale. Monthly testing by a specific professional third-party maintenance company, in my view, was acceptable, and from my understanding, that is what is now being proposed by the review of all documentation is monthly testing. It is a regular testing. It is documented, and I checked the lift record book in the lift motor room every time when I went to undertake a assessment.
In light of that answer, perhaps we can just have back up on the screen at the same time as this document, section 23 of your April 16 FRA we've just been looking at CST 403161, page 31. That's now on the left-hand side of your screen, Mr. Stokes, and on the right-hand side, no, we want to have, on the right-hand side, we want PAS 79, CTA 703, page 94, at the foot. Thank you, that's there. Now, if you compare the two, you've got monthly inspections and annual testing. PAS 79 has weekly and monthly testing and 6th monthly inspection and annual testing. Weekly and monthly testing, 6 monthly inspection and annual testing. Why is yours different?
Mine's the 6 monthly testing is the insurance inspection, my understanding. As long as the annual testing is there along with the monthly, that would, as far as I would be aware, satisfy the requirements of the documentation for lift testing.
What about weekly testing? Why didn't you have weekly testing?
Well, weekly testing was undertaken of the call point within the lift by the caretakers.
Well, what's required is weekly testing of firefighting lifts. It doesn't confine itself just to the call point, does it?
Well, weekly testing is testing of a lift is ongoing. This is a guidance document which says weekly, monthly testing, 6 monthly inspections, and annual testing of a firefighting lift. They will all be undertaken in different ways, shapes, and forms by the maintenance contract in place.
Let's take a step back. We're looking at the 2016 FRA. Now, we know that this question that you're asking in your FRA was the same from 2010.
Yes.
It appears in 2010, 2012, and 2014, and the two FRAs in 2016. We know that PAS 79 was published in August 2012. Between August 2012 and November 2012, when you did your November 2012 FRA, did you have any training or do any CPD on the new PAS 79?
I can't remember. That's a long time ago.
Did you do any training or CPD on PAS 79 before October 2014?
I would have done, yes.
Right. At that stage, would you have realised that the template, if you'd studied it closely, was requiring or recommending, if it's a better word, weekly and monthly testing, 6-monthly inspection, and annual testing of firefighting lifts?
That is the guidance in that document. For my document there, my view is that I was complying with what was the requirements. There was weekly testing, which was carried out by the caretakers, monthly testing by a third party, and 6-monthly insurance followed by annual inspections by a third-party lift maintenance company was all being undertaken.
Right. It's not quite an answer to my question. I'm going to press you a little bit. What I'm really
Well, perhaps I can help, Mr. Stokes. I think what Council is inviting you to deal with is this. The PAS pro forma at 27.7 refers to weekly testing.
Yes.
Your document, halfway down the page on the left that we're looking at, doesn't refer to weekly testing.
It does.
Is there a reason for that?
No. It is their weekly testing was undertaken by the...
Yeah, no, it may have been done. The question is, why does it not refer to in that part of your document?
I have no idea, sir.
Right. I think that was your point, wasn't it?
It was an aspect of my point, certainly. Let me try and get to the other aspect of it, which is this. Did you ever sit down with your pro forma, which you see on the left-hand screen, and compare it with the pro forma on the right-hand side of your screen and make a conscious decision not to change your question about inspections and testing of lifts so as to conform with paragraph 27.7 at the foot of the page in the PAS pro forma?
I would have done, and it's the same if you look at 27.4, where it says annual maintenance of fire extinguishing appliances. On mine, it says monthly and annual.
You see, yours is traceable back to a time before PAS 79 2012. And what I'm really asking you is this. Did you ever sit down and consciously address whether the pro forma questions within at least this part of your FRA conformed to the new pro forma forming Appendix B to PAS 79 of August 2012?
Yes, I would have done.
You would have done. Do you remember actually doing that exercise?
Yes.
When was that?
I can't tell you, but I would have done because I would have worked to this, as you can see, as I said there, that right. I've got different, for the fire extinguishers, monthly included in mine, as well as annual.
So we can take it then, can we, that you made a conscious decision not to change your pro forma so as to bring it in line with 27.7?
Which is guidance.
No, sorry, please answer my question.
Yes.
You made a conscious decision, yes?
Yes.
Yes. And the reason, in brief, for that conscious decision not to update your pro forma to bring it in line with the PAS pro forma was what?
My understanding is that this was the requirements as would be required, and they met the criteria of inspections of a lift.
Now, if we look at the LGA guide, which is a further piece of guidance, HOM 3045964, please, at page 125.
Can I make an observation, please?
Yes, of course.
Weekly testing of a firefighting lift is also undertaken because the lift is interfaced with the fire alarm system within a building, and the lift grounds on the activation of the fire alarm system. So weekly testing of the lift can be undertaken at the same time as the fire alarm system is tested weekly. But in the case of the tower, there is no communal fire alarm system, so therefore weekly testing, because there's no interface, would not occur.
I see. If we look at the LGA guidance that I'm about to show you at page...
So can I make another observation, please, as I'm thinking this through in my mind? PAS 79 there and that guidance is not just specific to residential buildings. PAS 79 is all buildings with all firefighting lifts. And in that case, they would have a lift interfaced with a fire alarm system. As there's no fire alarm system, I've made my document site-specific for the tower, so therefore it's more relevant to the tower and the systems in place in the tower, rather than a generic document of PAS 79 that covers all buildings, residential and commercial.
Yes, you say that you've made your document site-specific for the tower. In fact, I think the question in that part of your FRA we've looked at was the same for other residential towers in the TMO stock, wasn't it?
It's because they're residential. No communal fire alarm systems fitted.
So it's not tailor-made for the tower, but tailor-made for the TMO stocks towers.
Or for buildings with no fire alarm systems fitted.
Now, can we just go then to what we want to look at, or what I want to look at, which is paragraph 81.26 under firefighting lifts. And it says this: lifts used for firefighting, I'm sorry, I should tell you, this is the LGA guide published in 2011. Lifts used for firefighting need to be subject to tests and maintenance on a regular basis. This will involve weekly operation of override switches and monthly inspections and annual testing and maintenance of the lifts. Were you aware of that principle after 2011?
Correct, yes.
You were. Do you agree with Mr. Hawkins's conclusion, and for the record, it's paragraph 462 of his report at RHO 703, page 181, that best practice would have required testing of the operation of the fire control switch on a weekly basis by an individual on site?
Best practice, yes.
Yes. Do you agree with him?
Yes.
Yes. So why did you choose not to follow the British Standard and the LGA guide and check if there was a weekly testing of the override fire control switch?
Because, in my view, monthly testing by a competent person is a lot better than having an employee test it on an ad hoc basis.
Well, it wouldn't be ad hoc, it would be weekly.
A weekly basis.
But the problem with that theory is, isn't it, that a month is 4 times longer than a week, and that an awful lot can go wrong during a month rather than a period of 7 days.
But when you test it, you're only testing it for that moment in time. It could go wrong 10 minutes later.
But, well, that's an argument. But do you accept that by leaving it 4 times longer, there is a greater risk that something will have gone wrong in the meantime?
I do accept that, but also that regular testing is regular testing. I believe the government guidance that is coming out is going to suggest monthly testing now.
Well, can we steer away from what is happening now and everything that's going into that, please, Mr. Stokes? I'm quite interested in what's happened in the past. But I think you accept, don't you, that you are not in compliance with best practice, according to Mr. Hawkins's opinion.
In his opinion.
Now, then can we go, please, to your second witness statement, CST 3030186 at page 34. We've touched on this, and so I'll take this quite quickly. Paragraph 127 I've shown you, and I've read that to you now. As to what you say in paragraph 127 there at the foot of your screen, let me show you what Dr. Lane says. Can we go, please, to BLARP 2, and then there are 5 zeros, 27, page 256. It's BLARP 2, 5 zeros, 27, 256. and this is paragraph 12.2.34, where she says they needed to satisfy, that's the LFB. Well, actually, it could be the LFB. It could also be you and Miss Ray, if you look at the previous paragraph. They needed to satisfy themselves they could rely on the lift to operate as it was required to do, and so not pose a risk to the relevant persons. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
You do. Now, in your 2016 significant findings schedule, can we go to that? CST 403098 at page 6, paragraph 19G, you can see towards the top of the screen, or middle of the screen, really. You've got a red item there. It is not known if the fire service controls for the lifts be moved back down to the street level. And then under actions to be taken, you've put, can it be confirmed that the fire service controls for the lifts have been moved back down to the street level? If not, then this must be undertaken immediately. Was that not an opportune moment for you to check the operation of the override switch, especially given your concern about whether it had been moved as part of the refurbishment?
But as a risk assessor, I wouldn't undertake actual practical, physical operation of a system.
And you say in your statement that you would have expected those inspections to have included checking whether the fire switch worked, but you didn't specifically check that with the TMO yourself.
As he physically asked the question, I had the information from the logbook in the lift motor room to say that monthly inspections were undertaken. I physically did not check the lift, and I don't think it would be risk assessor's job to actually undertake that operation.
Did you ask the TMO specifically the question, have the ESAs checked, or have the lift engineers checked?
Yes, by that question.
Well, you say I would have expected. In your statement, you say I would have expected those inspections to have included checking, etc. Did you ever ask the TMO that question?
The monthly inspections were undertaken by a company whose sole purpose was to check the lifts, including the operation of the firefighter switches on a monthly basis. And I had evidence of that from the lift motor room logbook that had been undertaken. My question in that significant finding was, has the override switch, which is now not in use at that floor level, been taken back down or disconnected and taken back down to the street level, which would now be the operational fire service entry point?
Now,
Sorry, can I just understand something?
Sorry, sir.
Sorry, Mr. Millett. Your FRA notes that it is not known if the fire service controls have been moved. Why was that unknown?
So where we're looking at here, this item, while the tower was under refurbishment, sorry, I'm going to use my hands, ground floor was the entry point.
Yeah.
But under the refurbishment, there was a walkway level 4 floors up that came in from Grenfell Walk. That's what I'm talking about here. So there was 2 sets of controls at that point. So the people entered the building at this 4th floor level. That bridge had now been taken away, so these controls were now redundant.
Well, presumably you could see whether there was a switch box at that previous entry level.
There was, it was still on the wall.
And you could see whether there was a switch box at street level.
There was.
Oh, so is your question really, you don't know which is operative?
No, my question is, it is not known if the fire service controls for the lifts have been moved back down to the street level only.
Well, isn't that the same thing?
Well, at that time, I believe that there was 2 lots of switches in use.
Right.
what gave you to believe that?
Well, because that was the walkway was the entry point to the building for the residents.
Did you think both were working?
I don't know. That's why I've asked the question. Please, can you confirm that the fire service controls have been moved back down to street level?
Now, going back, if we can, or sticking with paragraph 127 of your second statement, which we have on the screen, just focusing on the last sentence there, which says, I also understood that this would have been checked, that's the fire switch, by ESAs and should have in any event been checked by the LFB during their visits. And in light of that, can we just look at your FRAs where you detail maintenance of the lifts in section 5? Can we go, and again by way of example, to the 2014 FRA at CST 403157, page 14. And if you go to the foot of the page in the box, you see that it says, 4 lines down, there is a planned maintenance programme of inspections for the lift machinery stroke plant within the building, which is carried out by a third-party contractor, Express Lifts Limited. The records kept centrally in the hub in Kensal Road, but there is a record book kept in the lift motor room to aid the service engineers. The last service dates in the lift record books is 12 September 2014. Both lifts installed in this building are firefighting evacuation lifts, according to the TMO's documentation. These fighting evacuation lifts have their own independent dedicated power supply and firefighters control switch. Would you agree that in that text, you don't say that you believe the ESAs or the LFB are undertaking inspections?
Correct, because it's not in that part of the document.
And there's no, we don't have to go to them, but we can if you like, but there's no subsequent action that you set out in your significant findings schedule that that should be checked and that inspections should be implemented.
Because if you go back to the previous page, sir, it actually says monthly inspections are being undertaken.
Let's go back to the previous page.
Records 12th of September 14.
There's planned maintenance programme of inspections for lift machinery. Yes. Would you help me just find out where it says that there is a monthly inspection or any inspection by the LFB or the ESA?
There is no inspection by the LFB because they wouldn't test a lift on a monthly basis. The monthly inspection is there recorded 12th of September 14.
Yeah, yes. That's service dates. I'm just... Do you accept that you don't mention there anywhere in this FRA that you believe that the ESAs or the LFB are undertaking or should be undertaking those inspections?
Because this is a FRA, they wouldn't undertake, sorry, the LFB would not undertake inspections of a lift. If they undertook a 72D visit to the building, they would check the lift.
But well, you see, I'm puzzled by this because you say in your statement that the switch should have been checked or would have been checked by the ESAs, the caretakers, and in any event by the LFB during their visits. All I'm putting to you is that there's no hint of that in your FRA.
Because
but do you accept what I'm putting to you?
I accept what you're putting to me, but the LFB during the LFB visit. So if the LFB visited and undertook a 72D, I would expect them to check the lift. This is not about LFB visits here. I'm just making a statement that if the LFB visited the building to do a 72D, I would expect them to check the lifts.
If you had believed that the ESAs, the caretakers, were required to inspect the firefighter's switch, that was something you could have checked with Paul Stedman for the purposes of Grenfell Tower anyway.
If I expect, they would take, the ESAs were checking the call points, their manual button inside the lift for voice, and it was undertaken on a monthly basis by the company that was employed by the TMO to undertake monthly inspections of the lift, which included testing the drop switches.
If you could just go back to paragraph 127 of your second statement, in the last 3 lines of the paragraph I read to you, you say, I would have expected those inspections to have included checking that whether or not the fire switch worked. I also understood that this would have been checked by ESAs. Did you ever ask Paul Stedman whether he had checked the fire switch?
The drop switch.
Well, you referred to fire switch there. You
fire switch, which is the... I would have expected those inspections, checking whether the fire switch worked. So so the monthly inspections, during those monthly inspections, I would have expected those inspections to have included checking of whether the fire switch worked or not. So that's the monthly inspections. I also understood that this would have been checked by ESAs and should have in any event been checked by the LFB during their visits. So, yes.
Yes. So my question, did you ever ask Paul Stedman, who was the ESA for Grenfell Tower, whether he had checked what you say you understood he would have checked?
On the lifts, no.
Why not?
Because it's not for me to challenge. If I ever saw him on site, it's not for me to check what he's actually doing his job.
This belief that you refer to here, I would have expected, is that hindsight, really, or was this something that you always assumed at the time without ever actually checking for yourself?
I understood that was what was being undertaken, yes.
But you didn't think to ask Paul Stedman about it?
No.
You see, he says in his statement, and I'll just read it into the record, it's TMO 008700944, page 2, paragraph 6, that he would not check the firefighter switch.
So the drop switch?
Well, he says the firefighter switch. And that's you're using the word fire switch.
So fire switch is the drop switch?
Yes.
And he's saying which switch?
The firefighter switch.
Is there some confusion here between the call button inside the lift and the actual drop switch on the outside, which is for firefighter use only?
Well, let's have a look and see exactly what he says in case it's my confusion. TMO 008700944, page 2, please, paragraph 6. That's TMO 008700944, page 2, paragraph 6. Well, we can't. It can't be found.
No, it may be found. The reference you want.
I'll try it again.
TMO
008700944. Page 2.
All right.
Thank you very much. Paragraph 6. I wish to clarify that in my earlier statement where I said I would check the LFB drop key was working, I was not referring to the drop key that would be used by the LFB to take control of the lift. I would not touch that LFB drop key for the lift, and I suspect this was checked by the LFB during their regular visits. What I was referring to was the LFB drop key for the main door to the tower, which is a different type of key to the key used on the lifts. This drop key, which I had a copy of, would work on most door entry systems and permit the LFB to gain access to the building, to a building without a fob. It is very easy to use. So that's what he says. He says he would not check the LFB drop key was working. So
my understanding was that.
So, well, you tell me, it's right, isn't it, I think, that he is saying that he would not check the switch that brings the lifts under the control of the fire service.
But reading this, he's confused on which one he's talking about as well. I
don't want you to comment. I'm just showing you his evidence. My question is, did you ever ask Mr. Stedman?
No.
No.
It was my understanding.
Right. Now, can we then look at Mr. Todd's opinion at CTA 6011, page 90? And we go, please, to paragraph 8.86 on that page. And this is what Mr. Todd says. He says, in that second witness statement, Mr. Stokes also states that in relation to the firefighter's switch, he understood that this would have been checked by ESAs and should have, in any event, been checked by the LFB during their visits. I've been presented with no evidence that would form a basis for Mr. Stokes' understanding in relation to the ESAs. The ESAs were required to check that lifts operated correctly, but this would not imply to me that they were required to confirm the correct operation of the firefighters' switches. It is a matter for evidence of fact as to whether they were trained to do so, or were even in possession of the drop keys required to operate the switches. Moreover, at the time of Mr. Stokes' most recent FRAs, LFB had long since ceased to test firefighter switches on a routine basis, nor was it, in my opinion, incumbent on them to do so. Now, just focusing on the last part of that paragraph, do you agree with what Mr. Todd says there in the last sentence?
That it wasn't the LFB had ceased to test firefighter switches. Is that the...
That's the last sentence, yes.
I would be not privy to them, the LFB changing their operational procedures, but my understanding of when I undertook 72D visits, it was part of the requirement that you tested the drop switch.
But as an experienced fire risk assessor, why wouldn't you be privy to, and if not privy to, at least have an understanding of LFB practices?
I wouldn't have access to their operational procedures or practices.
And if you had continued to believe that the LFB would carry out these tests or inspections on firefighter switches and that practice had changed, then you ought to have known that that practice had changed so that you could no longer reasonably rely on it.
Well, LFB should have been following guidance in GRA 3.2, and if they changed it internally, they're not going to advertise it to a fire risk assessor. I would expect them to follow national guidance on 72D checks and visits.
Do you accept that if it was the case that LFB had long since ceased to test firefighter switches on a routine basis and was no longer and not incumbent upon them to do so, then you could not reasonably have relied on the LFB checking the switch as you've said in your statement?
I was not privy to the LFB's internal information. I could only go with the information I had at the time, which is under 7.2D. It would be reasonable for them to check that the actual system worked.
Flat entrance doors. I want to start with the door replacement programme. Now, if we go to your second witness statement, please, at CST 3030186, page 15. You say at paragraph 57 there, in relation to the door replacement programme undertaken by the KCTMO, CS Stokes had no specific role other than providing advice on the requirements for fire doors set out in relevant guidance. This advice was provided in the abstract. I did not advise on the acquiring of a procurement company, the procurement process, the selection of Mant's master door, or any tender bids submitted. The advice that you provided was in addition to your work as a fire risk assessor, wasn't it?
Correct.
And it was therefore, is this right, ad hoc advice, as provided for in your contract?
Yes.
Yes. And you provided that advice, I think, to Abigail Acosta of the TMO.
The request came via Janice Ray.
Indeed. And I was going to ask you, you also provided that advice to Janice Ray.
I would have gone that route anyway. My point of contact was Janice Ray.
Indeed. And it's right, I think, as you say in your statement in the next paragraph, that it was Janice Ray who provided instructions to you to provide that advice.
Correct.
Yes. And if we go back to paragraph 57 of this statement, you say this advice was provided in the abstract. In the middle of that paragraph, as I've read to you. What did you mean by in the abstract?
Can you provide us some information on the standards required of fire doors for flats?
I see. As far as you were aware, was anybody else providing advice to the TMO about the requirements for fire doors?
I would have no privy or knowledge of that information. I undertook what the job was from Janice Ray. Now,
paragraph 58 of your statement, you say, along with my letter of 24th of June 2011, and you exhibit it, I did author the document titled Criteria for Prioritising the Fitting of New Entrance Doors to Flats at the request of Miss Ray. Again, this was provided to assist the KCTMO navigate its way through the door replacement process. I'm not aware of how this document was used. And if I was ever aware, I cannot now recall. Other than those documents referred to above, I do not recall providing further specific advice on new entrance doors, but will have discussed the contents of those letters with Miss Ray. To what extent was Janice Ray involved in the door replacement programme from what you could see?
Facilitator, as far as I was aware,
Meaning,
that she
What?
contacted me and asked for information.
right. Do you know whether she had any input, any decision-making functions, from what you could tell, into the type of door chosen?
No, I wouldn't have any knowledge of that at all.
Right. Now, if we go to your first statement, please, at CST 403063 and turn to page 29, foot of that page, let's look together at paragraph 88. You say there under the heading Replacement Doors, in 2012, the KCTMO undertook a wide-ranging flat door replacement scheme across its buildings, 2012 replacement. This included the tower. The doors were replaced by Mance Master Door, and I was provided with product literature from Mance Master Door, which purported that the doors they would be supplying were 30-minute fire-rated fire doors, FD30. And then you go on, having exhibited some documents, to say this. There was some initial concern at the time about the requirements necessary for fire doors, and you exhibit some further documents. An FD30 rating was, however, sufficient to maintain compartmentation in accordance with the building regulations, and when asked about this, that is what I confirmed. As can be seen, I was only able to comment on the information available to me. Now, I'd like to look back at the advice that you gave at the time about the requirements for flat entrance doors. Can we start, please, with CST 402660? This is a letter that you sent to Janice Ray on the 10th of November 2010, and it's entitled Subject the replacement of fire doors to some entrance doors of residential flats. And then underneath that it says criteria for prioritising the fitting of new entrance doors to flats. First, why, do you remember, had Janice Ray asked for that advice at that time?
My belief was that where would the priorities lie? If we have X amount of money to provide X amount of doors, where would you suggest we start?
Did you have a discussion with her which led to this letter being written?
I would have done.
Right. Can you remember anything about it?
Backwards and forwards discussion. What do you think about this? How does this go?
Right. Was that on the telephone or by email?
I would have thought it was by telephone.
Right. Now, if we look at the number of criteria, you can see there are 8.
Yes.
And those are the priority lists. That is the priority list. And then underneath that you say this. Once the locations of the entrance doors or corridor subdivision doors in buildings has been decided upon, the following options could be implemented. And then you see options at the foot of the page, and then there are 3 options. The first is this one: replace the old door and frame, the door set, with new 30-minute fire-rated door set, incorporating intumescent strips and cold smoke seals, FD30S, with a self-closing device. And then over the page 2, option 2, replace the old door with a new 30-minute fire-rated door inserted into the old frame, incorporating intumescent strips and cold smoke seals in the new door, FD30S, with a self-closing device. 3, fit intumescent strips, if not fitted, and cold smoke seals in the existing door and a self-closing device to the door. So in this letter, it's clear that you advised Janice Ray that what was required for a replacement door in all of these options, and certainly the first 2, was an FD30S door.
Correct.
Yes. When you'd sent this letter to Janice Ray, do you remember any follow-up discussion with her about it?
There would have been probably a follow-up discussion. I can't remember any details.
Right. Did you explain to her at any stage that there was a need for doors to be tested for smoke leakage as a separate test to the test for fire resistance?
That's part of the testing undertaken on a door anyway.
To make it an FD30S?
On a new door, yes.
Yes. Do you agree that doors were required to be FD30S and not FD30 in order to be compliant with approved document B?
Depending on location of door.
Depending on location of door. Can you just enlighten us further about what that
So you only would have to have an S, the smoke seal, which is the marking that it has a cold smoke seal on it, if the door is off an internal or protected route or corridor. If it's on an external balcony or it's an external door, it does not have to have the S.
So if it leads to the outside, it doesn't need an S?
Correct.
I see. Now, if you go next, please, to CST 3013074. This is another letter that you sent Janice Ray, this time on the 7th of March 2011, and it's an update, or rather it has been updated, after meeting with Simon Throp on Thursday, 10th March 2011, and the subject is the replacement of entrance doors to some residential apartments. Do you remember why you met Simon Throp and Janice Ray about the replacement doors?
Only to probably go over the door. We've been a meeting requested by Janice.
Let's see if we can help a bit better. Can we go to CST 3013074, please? At the foot of the page. I'm sorry, page 2. Page 2. We've got the note of the meeting there. Underneath your name, it says, updated information after 10th March meeting with J. Ray and S. Throp. And underneath that, it says, Simon confirmed that the replacement doors would have self-closers and coal smoke seals fitted to them. Also, the letterboxes would be fire-rated. It was also agreed that I would be present when the first doors are installed, and Abigail Acosta, the project manager, will arrange the dates and times, etc. Do you remember why you met Simon Throp and Janice Ray?
I would have thought to go over that and look at the criteria of the doors.
Right. Now let's go back to the letter itself on page 1. And if we scroll down on your screen, please, we get to the third paragraph down, and it says this: on the Mance Master Door Limited Company website, it states that their doors meet the requirements of Part M of the building regulations, and fire check versions have also been successfully tested to BS 476 Part 22. 1. Can it please be confirmed that the doors that are to be fitted under the contract are the 30-minute fire doors FD30 version, and could the company forward all the relevant documentation to confirm this? Was that advice there not inconsistent with the advice that the doors needed to be FD30S that we had seen in your letter to Janice Ray of the 10th of November 2010?
No.
Why is that?
Because this... Right. So we're talking of the door there is 30. The S is the smoke seals, and they were in the frames of the doors. From my memory, they're in the frames of the doors.
I'm sorry, I'm not really following you. In your letter of the 10th of November,
yes,
your advice under 2 of the 3 options was that the doors needed to be FD30S.
Correct.
Now you're saying that they needed to be FD30. Could you explain why the advice is different?
So the S is the same, is an addition. So the door itself is an FD30 rather than an FD60. The S would be a standard fit because it's off an internal corridor if that's where the door is going to go. So this question here is, does it meet the requirements of being a 30-minute door, not a 60-minute door, 20-minute door? Is it a fire-rated door? Are they, so that under the contract, are the 30-minute door version, are they the 30-minute door version?
But you've put FD30.
Yes.
Why did you not put FD30S as you had before?
Because the door would be a 30. I'm asking the question here, under the contract, are there 30-minute fire door version? As in, they are not the 60 or any other version, are they the 30?
Right. Let's go over the page then. Paragraph 2. Can it please be confirmed? Can we scroll to the top of page 2, please? No, we'll need the very top of page 2 for the question. Thank you, yes. Paragraph 2. Can it please be confirmed that the doors will meet all the requirements of the current building regulations and of the HM Government Fire Safety Risk Assessment Guide for sleeping accommodation? This includes the hinges, letterboxes, call letter plates and any securing or locking mechanisms.
Yes.
And then you go on under note in the second paragraph underneath the italics to say this, and I think, please can we scroll down a little bit further on the screen to see it. You say, I have attached the relevant pages from approved document B, Fire Safety, Volume 2 for your information, Section 5, General Provisions, and Appendix B, Fire Doors, and I draw your attention to items 5.2, 5.5, 5.6, and 5.11 of Section 5, General Provisions, also to item 2 of Appendix B and item 2A of Table B1. Now, just help us, please, try to get to the bottom of what that was that you attached. Can we please look at CST 706? Do you think that this was the document that you attached?
It looks the document that would be the correct one at the time.
Can we please scroll up to the very top of the... Yes, thank you. It says there at the top, good morning, after the meeting yesterday, here is relevant information regarding flat entrance doors. I have highlighted the two parts in green. Carl.
Yes.
It looks from that this is what you sent. Yes. Now, if we look down the document at page 2, please, it says Appendix B, fire doors. You see that?
Yes.
And then if you look at 1 on the left-hand side at the top of the screen, you haven't marked it in green, but it nonetheless says all fire doors should have the appropriate performance given in Table B1 by either A, by their performance under test to BS 47622, fire tests on building materials and structures, methods for determination of the fire resistance of non-load bearing elements of construction. In terms of integrity, for a period of minutes, e.g. FD30, a suffix S is added for doors where restricted smoke leakage at ambient temperatures is needed. Now, you didn't highlight that, but you were aware of that, weren't you?
Correct, yes.
Why didn't you highlight that? Do you know?
I'm going to say because the questions asked at the time were, this is only relevant to the questions that were asked of me at the time at the meeting. So self-closing, so I've highlighted the parts that I answered their questions from. Right.
And then if you look a little bit lower down the left-hand column, if we can please scroll down to the foot of page 2, you can see at the very bottom of the page, the requirement in either case, you see, the requirement in either case is for test exposure from each side of the door separately, except in the case of lift doors, which are tested from the landing side only. And now if we look at the right-hand side of column, the right-hand side column of page 2, you've highlighted in green paragraph 2, and particularly the last part of that, self-closing devices are still necessary on flat entrance doors.
Correct.
And then on page 3, paragraph 2A in table B1, under 2A in a compartment wall if it separates a flat from a space in common use. And then you see it says FD30S.
Correct.
So you've advised in your 7th and then revised 10th March 2011 letter that we were looking at that Mance master door should confirm that the doors should be FD30, but you've highlighted here the provisions of ADB that specifically say that the door needs to be FD30S.
Correct.
Can you explain that?
Because the door needs to be an FD30, and if it's being located in any situation where the flat is onto a common space in common use, it must have the S.
Yes. So why not say FD30S in your letter rather than FD30?
Because the door is FD30, depending on its use, you put the S in or not.
Right, but let's so I can understand this better, because I confess I'm slightly puzzled at the moment. If we go back to your letter, please, at CST 30130074, page 1, your first question. If we just scroll back down, please, to the bottom part of the screen. Why are you asking that the doors that are to be fitted under the contract are FD30 as opposed to FD30S?
Because the S is an additional item on the door. So I'm asking there to confirm that the doors are FD30 doors.
But did you think that the FD30 doors were not going to be flat front doors leading onto a communal area?
That they would be FD30 doors. I'm asking for them to confirm there are FD30, and then the second part of the information is if they're on any route onto a common area, they must be have the S fitted.
You don't make it clear in this letter, do you, that for those doors that are not leading from a flat to a common area, they don't need to be FD30S, but need only be FD30. But for flat front doors, they need to be FD30S.
If they're off a protected route.
But you don't make that clear here, do you?
This would have been this letter is after a meeting and discussion, and this letter is relevant to that meeting. So the parties in that meeting would have been, we would have all had this discussion at the time. I'm providing this as an update to clarify from the meeting.
Right. So just to be absolutely clear, can we go to the second sentence? You say here, this might be relevant, that I believe that in the first phase, the entrance doors that are being replaced are in the protected staircases, i.e. internal doors on staircases of buildings, not entrance doors off open walkways, balconies, i.e. external doors.
Correct.
Does that help you?
Yes, because...
Could you explain?
Well, if they were off external balconies, open walkways, they would be FD30. Not require the S.
I get that point, but what about internal doors on staircases of buildings?
Would have to have the S.
Sorry?
Would need the requirement of the S.
Exactly, they would need the requirement of the S, and therefore, given that you're talking here about doors that need the S, why is your question in 1 limited to FD30?
Because I'm asking the question in 1, can they confirm the doors are FD30 doors to start with and not any other rating of door?
Why?
Because you can get other ratings of doors. You can get 60s, 20s.
Did you ever, standing back from this debate, did you ever explain the provisions of approved document B relevant to fire doors in these locations to Janice Ray, and particularly the need for smoke leakage testing on both sides?
Whether smoke leakage testing on both sides would ever come up I don't know, but we would have had the conversation about smoke seals being required on doors off common parts. on new doors as they're fitted to comply with building regulations requirements.
You say you would have had the conversation.
I would imagine we've had it more than once, yes.
Well, I don't. Imagining is always insightful, but can you remember a conversation that you had with Janice Ray or Abigail Acosta when you told them that the doors needed to restrict smoke leakage? The internal doors needed to restrict smoke leakage.
It would have been because this letter would have been the result of that meeting, so therefore it would have been discussed. Otherwise, I wouldn't have sent the building regulations requirements highlighting in green why they are required.
Just help me with this, if you would. As a matter of structure,
So,
the smoke seals are fitted where?
can be fitted on the door edges, can be fitted in the door frames. Different doors, different how it's constructed. The door, it's how the door is being tested at the test laboratory.
Yeah, but if I've understood you correctly, a door with smoke seals fitted around the edges,
So,
and we can forget for a minute the door frame for this purpose, could be regarded as an FD30, if it's a 30S.
so
If you were going to fit smoke seals into the door frame,
so
you could then draw a distinction between the door and the door set.
correct.
So actually, to refer to the doors as being FD30 isn't inapposite, because the seals might be fitted to the door itself.
Correct, and these are UPVC doors, and when you have that sort of structure, normally the smoke seals are always in the frame.
Yeah, all right, thank you. Yes, sorry, Mr. Millett, I just wanted to understand clearly whether we were talking about the door set, or somewhere between the two.
Yes.
Can I confuse you as well, sir, by saying there is now products on the market where you don't have it in the door edge or in the door frame? It's actually on the horizontal plane. It's called one of the product names is Batwing, and it actually goes into the groove, and you just self-adhesive and put it in the groove.
All right. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Now, can we go to CST 403063, please? Yes. Now, this is your second. I'm sorry, your first witness statement, page 30, paragraph 89. If you can go to that, please. CST 403063, page 30, paragraph 89. Yes, thank you. And at paragraph 89, you say, at the request of Miss Ray and Abigail Acosta, a KCTMO project manager, I attended the trial installation of the first installed fire door at the tower on 11th of May 2011. As it so happened, this was flat 16, along with a representative from LHC, the surveyors instructed by the KCTMO, to observe the replacement door installations. And then if you go on to paragraph 61 of your second witness statement at CST 3030186, page 16, paragraph 61, you explain further the purpose of your presence at that meeting, and you say, in respect of my attendance on site on 11th May 2011 to observe LHC's inspection of the door installed by Master Door at flat 16, I have little to add to my comments at paragraph 89 of my first statement and the documents referred to therein. I understood that I was asked to attend by the KCTMO to observe a single sample door being installed. Although, therefore, I observed the installation of this door on this one occasion, the purpose of my presence was to ensure that LHC's inspection process, you've underlined that, for all other doors in the building that were to be changed by Master Door, the installation of which I would not witness, was sufficient for me and or KCTMO to rely on when addressing this issue in an FRA. Can you to explain a little bit further, why did you need to check LHC's inspection process?
For personal comfort, that the actual door had been fitted soundly, correctly, proficiently.
Well, I can understand you attending to make sure that they fitted the door soundly and correctly, but you make a point in this paragraph twice that your purpose of your presence on site on that day was to observe LHC's inspection or inspection process rather than installation. Why is that?
The documentation that was being used at the time. At this particular time, if my memory serves me correctly, there was very much within the world of door fitting a contract that had gone horribly wrong. I'm going to say Stoke-on-Trent. It cost the council millions to put right, where the doors were not fitted correctly, and that was in my mind at the time. And also the documentation copy, I was looking at, did it have all the information that was needed? Because I was going to have to rely on this, that the installation was correct. They are the third party inspecting all these doors, and I just, for my own comfort.
Well, I mean, when I first read this paragraph, I thought you might have made a mistake, and instead of installation, put the word inspection. But do you actually mean inspection there, as opposed to installation?
Yes, if that's what I've put, that was so my inspection of the doors to see that the doors under the architrave, was it being filled correctly?
Yeah.
Were there gaps?
Well, I follow that, but that doesn't tell you anything about the inspection process to be undertaken by LHC. That tells you about the installation.
Okay. Yes, it does.
Yes. So can we read, instead of the word inspection in those two places in that paragraph, the word installation?
Yes.
Right. Now, you were able to watch the installation. Do you remember whether there was any discussion about the fire safety standards of the door or the door furniture or door frames?
I would have checked at the time whether there was a discussion. I wouldn't have discussed it with the contractors fitting the door because they were the fitters of the door. But I would have checked with that the door was an FD30 door.
Mm. And how would you have checked that?
Well, normally on one of the doors there would be a sticker on the door to show me that the door would have FD on there somewhere.
Right. And FD30 or FD30S?
Remember, the door would be 30 because the S is in the frame.
Right. Were you given any product literature in relation to these doors that were being installed on that occasion, other than that which you've exhibited to your statements?
That's what I had.
Now, after this site visit in May 2011, you wrote to Janice Ray, CST 50991, please. Mr. Chairman, I'm just looking at the time. We can certainly go to this letter, but there are a number of questions about it.
Would you rather
Will probably
break at
take
this
us
point?
past the break. It's probably sensible to break at this point.
Yeah, well, it's slightly earlier than usual, Mr. Stokes, but we'll take the break now. Will we come back, please, at 11:30?
Sir.
And don't talk to anyone about your evidence when you're out of the room, please.
Sir.
All right, thank you very much. Right, 11:30, please. Thank you. Yes, would you ask Mr. Stokes to come back in, please? All right, Mr. Stokes, ready to keep going?
Thank you, sir. Yes.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Millett?
Yes. Mr. Stokes, can I go back, please, to the letter we were looking at, or about to look at, CST 50991. This is a letter of the 23rd of May 2011, if we can just scroll to the top of that to see the date. And the subject is the fitting of the first replacement entrance door to flat 16 Grenfell Tower. And you say, thank you inviting me to view the installation of the first replacement entrance door to flat 16 of Grenfell Tower on the 11th May. My comments are limited to that of the fire requirements needed to be compliant with the Fire Safety Order 2005. From the information given to me by the installation team on site and the technical sheets beforehand by yourselves, the door fitted was a fire-rated version FD30 of the Shore Door GRP range, manufactured by Mance Master Door. So after the trial door installation, it seems that you provided your opinion on whether the door or doors complied with the requirements of the Fire Safety Order and Approved Document B, yes?
Correct.
And you confirmed that they were FD30, yes?
From the information I was given, yes.
Yes, and that was contrary to your advice, wasn't it, of the requirements for the doors which you gave before the installation, which was that, at least according to the parts of ADB that you highlighted in green, they should be FD30S.
I disagree. The doors are FD30, and as it says in this document, so it says here, the door fitted was a FD30, and then it says there is fitted reinforced frame. The door was fitted with self-closing device, intermittent and cold smoke seals. So therefore, that makes it the S.
So you're referring, are you, to lower down the paragraph?
Correct.
It doesn't say anything about FD30S in there, does it? You don't refer to that.
No, but it says on there, intermittent and cold smoke seals and fire-rated letterbox.
When you sent the green highlighted version of Approved Document B to Janice Ray, under cover of your earlier letter that we saw, 10th of March 2011, you didn't explain to her, did you, that the FD30S in the table we looked at was to be arrived at as, by way of an accumulation of characteristics. First of all, an FD30 door, but some S added by virtue of the presence of cold smoke seals somewhere. You didn't do that, did you?
Well, I can't tell you. I didn't do it, and I can't tell you I did it. But it's a long time ago. But
well,
the documentary evidence in the information I gave her would have that information in it. But I'm sure I would have covered it, the same as I've covered it with you this morning. The door is an FD30. The S can come in the frame.
You don't say here that because the door is FD30 and because there are cold smoke seals, therefore the door is it should be regarded as, or was, an FD30S door and therefore compliant with Approved Document B. Now, we don't see you say that here, do we?
No.
Why is that?
The information here would make it an FD30S.
Where were the cold smoke seals?
In the door frame.
In the door frame. Now, do you remember what information you were given by the installation team on site, if any?
No. Is that an honest answer?
Do you remember what technical sheets you looked at before your visit?
It would be the information I've provided if I've still got that information.
Right. Was that what you exhibited into your second witness statement?
If that's the information I have, yes.
All right, well, let's look at that. It's exhibited to para 59, page 15 of your statement. Let's have a look at that. CST 3030186, page 15. Let's go into the statement first and then look at the exhibit. You say there, at para 59, I was asked to comment on certain Mance Master Door literature. See, and then there are some exhibits that you've referred to, which I believe I downloaded as a PDF from Masterdoor's website. My review of this material was desktop in nature only, and I was really only checking that the doors were available as 30-minute fire doors, which were required as I had informed the KCTMO. And you refer to 3 exhibits there, CST 402306, 2070, and 50116. Did you look at all 3 of those documents on the same occasion?
Without seeing the documents, I can't tell you that.
Well, let's look at the first and second of those. CST 402306 and 2070. First, CST 402306. And this says master door information. And if you cast your eye down the page, it runs on, in fact, it doesn't run onto 2 pages. That's the limit of it, actually. You can see that it says under fire doors that they achieve 30 and 60 minutes fire resistance. You see that?
Yes.
They don't say what standard the doors are, do they?
No.
They don't say what tests the doors have undergone, do they?
In this document, no.
No. So on that document, you couldn't have made your assessment of the standards of the doors, could you?
Only in as much as it says our doors have been developed to the highest specification and tested to the exacting standards of.
Yeah, but that didn't tell you what the standards were.
No, but that's the information I'm going on at the time I've been given.
You could certainly see that it doesn't say that they are either FD30S or even FD30.
Correct.
Yeah. That's the first document. Let's look at the second one, CST 402070. That's what we have for that, which is what you exhibit. And this is available style options. And there is some nomenclature or tag beneath each one. But they aren't fire safety standards, are they? They're just serial numbers, I think.
It's the flame at the bottom right is the legend says available as a 30-minute fire door.
Yes, but no, not FD30 or FD30S. You can't tell, can you?
FD30, it says available as a 30-minute fire door,
Yes,
which is FD30.
All right, but that's as much as you can tell, isn't it?
Correct.
Now, that's just telling you what's in the range. It doesn't tell you what was fitted and whether that was a 30-minute fire door, whether 30S or 30 alone.
Correct.
Yes. Then let's look at the third document you've exhibited, which you say you looked at, CST 50116. This is the Sure Door specification. If you go, please, to page 6 in that document, it does say composite fire door FD30. So that tells you that it was an FD30. So this document tells you it's FD30, yes?
Correct.
But not FD30S.
Correct. But it says tested to 476 part 22.
Indeed. Now, you then say, is it that document which you reviewed which told you that the fire door was an FD30?
The information in front of me, yes, and I asked for the clarification of this in my letter.
Now, if we go to CST 403149, please. This is a letter you wrote to Abigail Acosta of the TMO on the 24th of June 2011. And again, the subject matter is the required fire standards for entrance doors to residential flats. And if you look at paragraph 1, it's quite lengthy, but if you look at the very end of it, the last 4 lines of the first paragraph before the break, it says, the specifications of a fire door and the standard required in a particular location is specified by Part B of the building regulations in Appendix B, fire doors, and the performance of fire doors is judged by subjecting them to the standard test procedure specified in BS 476 Part 22, 1987, or BS EN 1634 Part 1, 2000. And then if you skip the next paragraph and go down to the bottom, well, sorry, let me just read to you, in light of your answers, the last sentence of that paragraph I was going to skip. Do you see it says, also incorporated in the door could be fire-rated glazed panels, and in new fire doors would be cold smoke seals and intumescent seals or strips. So are you saying there that in new doors there would be cold smoke seals and intumescent strips which would make them FD30S?
Correct.
Yes. Then you go on, the current building regulations requirements for an entrance door to a dwelling, stroke flat, etc., off a protected staircase or corridor is that it should be a minimum fire resistance of 30 minutes when tested for integrity to BS 476 Part 22, fitted with a self-closing device and intumescent strips and cold smoke seals, i.e. suffix S. And then if we turn to page 2, conclusion, you say, from all the technical information provided by the manufacturers and the inspection sheets provided by LHC, the new flat entrance doors supplied and fitted by Mance Master Door meet the requirements of the building regulations in that the doors are FD30S. This includes all the door furniture fitted to or on the doors. Any glazing fitted in the doors is fire rated according to the information provided, as is any glazing fitted surrounding the doors. Now, you say you looked at the technical information provided by the manufacturers there. Was that the same literature as we've just looked at, the 3 pieces of data that we looked at that you exhibited to your second witness statement?
This is later, isn't it? Would I have not seen anything else later date? I never did see the actual test certificates, but for the information I was given, it all appears that the doors meet the requirements of the building regulations as FD30S doors, if that was what was needed on an internal corridor, or FD30 if off an open external door.
Well, let me just be clear. You attended on the 11th of May, and you'd seen the 3 pieces of information you've exhibited.
Yes.
You're now writing in June. Was there any further technical information provided by Master Door, Mance Master Door, that you saw between your 11th of May visit and your writing to Abigail Acosta on the 24th of June 2011?
I'm going to say no.
No.
So that's visual on the day of the inspection, what I saw on the day, and information provided.
So can we proceed then on the basis that the technical information provided by the manufacturers to which you refer under your conclusion here is the 3 pieces of information you exhibited to your second witness statement?
Correct. Looking at this, the only other probably a piece of information I would have been provided would have been LHC's a report on that door.
What had you seen in the technical information to tell you that the doors that were fitted, or supplied and fitted, as you say, were FD30S doors, as you say?
Seen in the technical information would have been the standard to BS 47622, visually on site, actually seeing the door with the seals in the frame.
Did Mance Master Door provide the frame as well?
Yes, it's a whole door set.
It's a door set, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. So is what you're saying here that the new flat entrance doors supplied and fitted by Mance Master Door are FD30S?
Correct.
But with the literature we saw, doesn't say that, does it? The literature we saw says that the fire doors are FD30 and only in one place.
The doors, correct. But this is the whole door the whole door set we're talking about now, and the seals are in the door frames.
But the technical information told you that the door was FD30, so
Correct.
why are you telling Abigail Acosta that the technical information told you that the door supplied and fitted, the new flat entrance doors supplied and fitted, are FD30S?
Because visually I would have seen the S on site.
So not the technical literature, your personal observation.
Yes.
That's not what this letter says, is it?
The new flat doors supplied and fitted, I was on site when they were fitted.
Do you also agree that what you're saying here was contrary to your letter to Janice Ray of the 23rd of May 2011, where you said that the doors were FD30, or only required to be FD30?
The doors are FD30, the S is in the frame, but the whole door set makes up FD30S. With the self-closer, the letterbox fire rated, the spy hole, etc., etc.
Can you see from the debate we've been having over the last hour or so how there might be room for confusion here?
No, I can't, because we're talking people that I like to think would understand in this particular context here. This is the project manager who is understanding the specification that she is required. I can understand for a layperson picking up the documentation, but that's no different from a layperson picking up building regulations and trying to understand Appendix B with all the different boxes in it.
In your letter, you say also that the FD30S standards includes all the door furniture fitted to or on the doors. Any glazing fitted in the doors is fire rated, etc.
Not the S doesn't. The S is just a suffix to say that it's got a cold smoke seal fitted.
Yeah. How did you know that the door furniture complied with the building regulations?
On that door, because it says on there it's part 476 part 22.
Door furniture?
Well, it comes with the furniture. It would have been fire tested with the furniture on it.
There's nothing in the literature about the door furniture. I haven't shown it to you in detail, but there isn't. My question is, was this just an assumption you were making, or did you actually verify this from any data?
I would not have known that, but the door set would come as per with the door furniture as it was tested.
I see. So is what you're saying here your interpolation of the mere fact that the manufacturer said that it had passed 476 part 22?
And also, LCH have looked at it, and I would like to think that someone in the TMO would have had all the certification for that door, which was part of the documentation I asked for from them, that they should have the test certificates for that door.
Self-closing devices, did you ask for product information on those?
No, that was part of the door furniture become as door set.
Were you asked? You didn't ask to see the test certificates for the self-closers?
No.
Right. Let's look in a little bit more.
The whole project was overseen by a project manager, and each door was overseen by a third-party LHC who I was relying on to undertake the inspection of the door as fitted to comply.
Yes, that's not really an answer, though, is it? Because you were actually asked for specific advice about the fire safety compliance of the doors, the new doors being fitted.
Correct. And
as an independent fire risk assessor.
I was just giving you factual information that, as far as I was aware, I undertook as a fire risk assessor from what I had in front of me, the door was compliant. Looking at the technical information would have been LHC and the project manager's responsibility, which I was doing the part that I was asked to do.
Can we then focus on self-closing devices a bit more closely? Can we go back in time then to 2010 and your letter of the 10th of November of that year at CST 402660? We looked at this earlier this morning, and can we go please to page 2 in that letter under items to consider? That's CST 402660. That's the first page of that, and you can see options at the bottom. And then items to consider is on page 2. Just looking at it, reminding yourself of it, generally speaking, do you remember what the purpose of that advice was?
I would have been asked for it.
Well, what were you asked for?
I can't tell you at the time. That if I was asked for something, I would have written it down afterwards.
Right. At paragraph C, you say this: an inspection system to make certain that the occupants of the flats do not disconnect or disable the self-closing devices once they've been fitted. At the time of this letter, November 2010, what was your understanding of what inspection system was required?
For fire doors.
No, for self-closing devices.
They should be fitted to fire doors.
Sorry. What was your understanding of what inspection system was required
At that
for
time,
self-closing devices on fire doors?
At that time, I believe the standard was regular inspections should be undertaken.
Did Janice Ray discuss that issue with you at this time?
I've got no idea 10 years ago whether that was discussed at that time, no.
Did you provide any advice to Janice Ray about what was required by way of an inspection system for self-closing devices on fire doors?
If I'd have been asked, I would have provided the requirements at the time, or whatever time I was asked, which I would just have provided that information.
Right. Now, moving into 2011, can we go please to TMO 00847318? This is a letter dated 30th of April 2011 from you to Janice Ray. And if we scroll a little bit down the screen, you can see that it says summary of items and topics in the document Fire Safety and Purpose-Built Blocks of Flats, draft, 18th of April 2011. So just to be clear for everyone else's benefit, you're giving her advice, it looks like, on the contents of the draft LGA guidance.
Correct.
Which hadn't yet been published, but was in draft and presumably in circulation in the industry.
Yes.
Yes. And presumably you'd read it.
And made comments on it.
And indeed. Now, if we look at this document a bit more closely, first, do you remember, were you asked by Janice Ray to provide you with advice on that document, or did you volunteer it?
I can't answer that. I wouldn't know. If I had that information, I would have passed it on because it was relevant to the door replacement programme.
Yes. Then let's go to page 1 at the bottom. If we just scroll down, you cite from the then in draft paragraph 68.2, and which says this: as flat entrance doors are required to be self-closing, there is a risk that any self-locking security devices fitted to the doors could accidentally lock residents outside of their own flats. As well as being a general nuisance for residents who may leave their keys inside the flat, there is also a risk during a fire if residents leave their flat and dependent family members remain inside the flat. The danger in these circumstances is that residents may resort to removing or disconnecting the self-closing device. Now, just pausing there, would you agree that at this time, which is at the time of the door replacement programme, or certainly before it, and I should just make the point that this letter is April 2011, not April 2010 as it says, it's an error. At this time, you made it clear to Janice Ray that it was important that there be self-closing devices, and brought to her attention the risks that residents might remove or disconnect those devices.
Correct.
Yes. Did you ever have a conversation with her about that risk? Do you remember?
About removing self-closing devices?
Yes, about the risk that residents might remove the self-closing devices.
I think there was probably had on more than one occasion.
Now, if we go to... is there any reason why you didn't set out in your letter the provisions from the draft LGA guide about setting up a programme of planned preventative maintenance for flat entrance doors?
No.
No. Can we then move on in time into June 2011, TMO 00867377? This is an email on page 2 of that email run that you sent to Abigail Acosta. towards the foot of your screen, on the 24th of June 2011, Abby, good morning, you say. I visited King Charles' house yesterday and 2 residents showed me their new flat entrance doors. And then in the third paragraph, you say, flat 13, the self-closing device has come out of the door. The occupant contacted TMO and explained this, that it was a newly fitted door, etc. And the TMO call person stated that Morrison's who come out and fix it. Do you remember that?
Not off the top of my head, but I've written it, so yes.
Right. Do you agree that it's a good example of how self-closing devices might fail?
Yes.
Yes. And that happens from time to time, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yes. And then if we go to 21st July 2011, another email to Abigail Acosta at TMO 00867 page 3, email at the foot of the page, please, entitled Re-New Doors at Grenfell Tower. Abby, good morning. On Tuesday, I was at Lancaster West and was informed that the self-closing device on 3 of the new flat entrance doors have come away from the door. This is the same problem as in King Charles' house. Are you aware of this recurring fault? Now, just to clarify, these are 3 doors at Grenfell Tower.
Yes.
I don't suppose you can remember the numbers of the flats?
No.
No. Did you note the flat numbers down?
If I haven't put them in there, I probably wouldn't know.
Why is that?
I've no idea, sorry.
It's quite important, isn't it, to know exactly which flats no longer have self-closers? No?
Well, it is, but I don't know what context this is in. So it says here, I was at Lancaster West. It doesn't say I was in the building. I could have been passed that information on by one of the caretakers.
Yes.
If I'd have known, and if I'd have asked them which ones, and they said, well, I don't know what context. All I'm doing is passing relevant information. Are you aware of this reoccurring fault?
Yes.
What's the answer?
Yes, and to be fair to you, your email says, I was informed that the self-closing device on 3 of the new flat front doors, etc. Taking a step back, did you ask whoever it was who told you that what the flat numbers were?
Well, I would have done. That would have...
Right. And so why didn't you note that down and pass that on to Abigail Acosta so that she could fix them?
Well, maybe they didn't know, and it was a conversation that ended there.
Well, you're speculating, I
I'm
think.
speculating, yes.
Right. Okay.
But if I hadn't known, sorry, sir, to interrupt, if I hadn't known, I would have written them down.
Right. Now, you say, are you aware of this reoccurring fault? Were you concerned that there was a recurring fault with self-closing devices on these master door doors?
Yes, because otherwise I wouldn't have gone to her when I didn't need to say, there is a problem, are you aware of it?
Yes. And we can see her response, page 3, second email up the page. If we scroll up, we'll see it. And she says, Carl, hi. No, I'm not. Thanks for bringing to my attention. I will raise as concern at our next site meeting. I will send you invite if you wish to attend. Do you know why this may be happening? Manufacturing issue or plain incompetence by the installer? And you replied, if you stay on the same page and look up to the email above it, you say, as far as I can tell and remember from the King Charles house door, the screws securing / holding the closer into the door are very short. And we can see from the rest of the email chain, from page 2 up, if we just scroll up to page 2, that was then raised by the TMO with Andy Webster of Masterdoor, who said that they were going through the block, changing the fixings if necessary. You see, he says changing the fixings if necessary. Do you see that?
Yes.
Now, at the time, were you aware of that remedial work being undertaken in Grenfell Tower in response to what you identified as the recurring problem?
I can't honestly say one way or the other, but I would expect something to happen, yes.
Do you know whether all the fixings have been changed or only those where Andy Webster deemed it to be necessary?
Well, I would like to think that all of them were changed, but that would be a maintenance policy or procedure between Abigail Acosta and the company.
Yeah. Did you seek to check any other doors at Grenfell Tower or ask the TMO about whether there had been any checks on the other doors at Grenfell Tower to make sure that the problem wasn't recurring beyond those doors that you'd identified?
As part of the risk assessment process, as I went around the building, I would have asked that question if I had access, or asked anyone on site, is there a problem?
Right. And did you do that?
Yes.
Right.
If there had been problems, it would have been highlighted in the significant findings as well as I went around the building.
Well, you say significant findings as I went round the building. This is July 2011, and your next FRA is not until November 2012, is it?
So that was correct, yes.
Is there any advice you recall giving about this recurring problem before the next FRA in November 2012?
I've got no recollection
No.
of.
Can we look at your advice of the 4th of August 2011, which is on self-closing devices, but a very slightly different aspect of it? TMO 00867 please. Now, this is a letter you wrote to Janice Ray, and the subject is the removal of the self-closing device on a flat entrance door. So the topic isn't failure or the screws, it's about removal by tenants. I'm going to show you the text of that. Before I do, can I just show you what prompted you to give that advice? Can we go to TMO 00867 please? This is, this is an email, second email in the string. Can we turn to page 2? Well, it's very bottom of page 1, but we can do with the top of page 2. It's from Janice Ray, and it's on the 28th of July 2011. Forwarding a concern raised by Lorna Cunningham with Abigail Acosta, and the title is Door Installation Elderly. Carl would welcome your view on the attached, and if you scroll down page 2, you can see what was attached. Lorna Cunningham, who was a resident liaison officer with the TMO, raises with Abigail Acosta a problem she identifies. And there's a lot of detail about it. We don't need to go to it. But the basic point is that this is a lady of a certain age having trouble opening or closing the door and having difficulty with it. And the lady finding that the door was very heavy and hurting her back. And therefore she wedges it open when she has to come in and out. Now, leave aside the personal difficulties with that. You're asked for your view. That was the run-up to this, and the email asks you for that. You then respond in your letter of advice of the 4th of August, and if we can go back to that, please, we can look at it. TMO 00867 She wants to remove the door closer. And you say, from the emails I've received, if we just scroll down to the first part of the letter itself, from the emails I've received and from the conversations with yourself and Abigail Acosta, the issue in question is that some elderly tenants are finding it difficult to open their flat entrance doors when the flat entrance door is fitted with a self-closing device. You've asked if a self-closing device fitted to a flat entrance door located in a protected staircase or a protected corridor can be removed so as to aid the person opening the door. And then you then refer to the relevant legislation under the RRO. And if we go over to at the bottom you say, I believe that by removing the self-closing device from a fire door, if we scroll down, I believe that by removing the self-closing device from a fire door, this could place the other residents of the building at risk, because if a fire was to occur within the flat, the entrance door would not close automatically, so the smoke and flame could enter the common parts of the building and would not be confined to the dwelling of origin. This is because there was a device fitted and you have now disabled or removed it. And then if you turn on, you can see you refer to the building regulations, the LGA guidance just released earlier that month, 1st of August 2011. And then if you go to paragraph 3 on page 2. It says the flat entrance doors are critical to the safety of the common parts. And then if you go to page 3, we can see the conclusion section. And if we look at the first paragraph in that, you say, I would advise that self-closing devices where fitted to a flat entrance door located in a protected staircase or a protected corridor should not be removed because the existing situation is being made worse. A building regulations term, and by removing the self-closing device, you could be, quotes, placing one or more relevant persons at risk of death or serious injury in the case of fire, close quotes. There are alternative solutions to removing the self-closing device from the flat entrance door. If you would like me to attend a meeting with the providers of the doors or with yourselves, please instruct me. Were you asked to attend a meeting to resolve the problem?
I can't remember.
Were you told whether the problem was resolved?
I'm going to say I can't remember, but there would be other solutions, and if I was asked, I would provide alternative solutions, and one of those could be an automatic opening device fitted to the door so it opened, releasing a bit of the tension on the closer, but there's other solutions as long as the door still shuts.
Do you remember giving that advice in respect of this particular flat or occupant?
I can't say I remember per se giving that advice, but if I would have been asked, I would have given it.
Right. Do you remember whether you followed up on this problem?
I can't remember, but as it says there, if you want me, please instruct me to do so.
Now, here we are in August 2011. You've had knowledge or information, first, that self-closing devices were coming away from the door frame or from the door. And secondly, self-closing devices were causing the door to be too heavy for some occupants, causing them to remove it or want to remove it. Did those pieces of information give you any cause for concern that these doors, and particularly the self-closing devices on them, were not fit for purpose?
No, this is standard. The goes for the elderly person first, if I answer that question. That is a standard problem. It's overcome in other, like residential care homes and that, by having what's called a swing-free closing device on the door, or a EMR, electronic magnetic release hold-open device on the door. There is other ways of solving the problem by still having the self-closing device on there, still having the door as a fire door, and making certain that it complies with building regulations, but also helps the occupier open the door.
Were those solutions that you've just very helpfully identified ever even considered for any of the buildings in the TMO stock?
Sitting here now, I can't actually say yes or no to anyone because my mind's whirling around. But if anyone had asked me, we would have gone through that. But I can't give you a specific, say, at this flat, at this time, in this block, this was done. But I'm sure it would have been done if it had been asked for.
If it had been asked for, but not, you didn't suggest it?
Well, if I'd have been asked, like here, we were having the conversation now, Janice would have had this conversation with me, is there anything we can do? And the answer would have been yes, the same as I've just given you the information now.
Do you ever recall, we see no evidence of it, you see, but do you ever recall ever saying to Janice Ray that one solution might be, for residents who are finding the self-closing devices as fitted particularly problematic, that she should investigate fitting alternatives that you've identified?
But that conversation would have happened, yes.
You say it would have happened. Do you remember it happening?
No.
No. FRAs on the subject. Let's look at that.
So could I answer your second,
Yes.
other part of the question, sorry, was there was a defect highlighted that the devices, self-closers, were coming away. A site meeting was undertaken, and as far as I was concerned, it was rectified by the manufacturer by going back to site, and I heard no other comments made in the future of mass door failings or self-closers failing.
Right.
And I would have asked that question, and no information was ever given to me about that.
Did you know if the recurring problem with the self-closing devices persisted at Grenfell Tower, or did you just assume from the silence about it that it didn't?
I'm going to say that it was resolved, and my understanding of the TMO's policies and procedures is if there is any damage to a door, the tenant would inform the TMO, and I met with repairs, well, they changed their name, Maintenance Repairs Direct, and I would like to think if there was reoccurring problems, either Janice or them would have told me.
You'd like to think that, but did you know as a fact whether the recurring problem with the self-closing devices persisted at Grenfell Tower, or did you just assume that because you didn't hear otherwise, they didn't?
I assumed that it was rectified, and I would have asked if I, like when I did my sample of door checks, I would find out if there was closers fitted, did they work? If they hadn't worked, I would have asked the person the question, how long has this not worked? Why has this been reported?
Now, let's look at your fire risk assessments for Grenfell Tower and the specific topic of flat entrance doors, if we can. You never had a target number of doors to inspect, did you?
No.
No. And really, is this right, that on your tours around the building, you would really sort of take pot luck with who was in and do what you could?
Potluck, yes.
Yeah. Were you sent the LHC site visit reports?
I received some. On the initial stages, I think I was getting them all the time, but I was getting the 1,000 odd, and I think after a while I expressed a comment that unless there was any failures or I needed to know if they were all okay, that was it.
Now, can we look at one of them? CST 402183. This is an LHC site visit report, external doors, and it is from June 2011. We know that because if you scroll down, please, to the bottom of the page, first page, you can see date of visit, 6th June 2011, and it's signed off by the technical officer and technical manager. And if you turn to page 2, it says Grenfell Tower. 134, door was inspected externally and it appeared to be professionally installed. However, fixings and operation of door closer were not checked. And then 162, this was a second visit to check that issues reported earlier have been rectified. 113, door was inspected externally and it appeared to be professionally installed. However, fixings and operation of door closer were not checked. Did you see this report at the time, do you think, June 2011?
I can't tell you whether I saw it or not.
Were you provided with it, do you think, as part of your 2012 FRA?
I could have been, I wouldn't know.
Were you generally afforded access to reports such as these?
Yes.
Now, if you had access to this document, can we assume that you would have looked at it?
Yes.
And having looked at it, can we proceed on the basis that you would have read this part under Grenfell Tower?
Well,
And
I
seen-
would have read out under most of them because most of them it says here fixings and door not operation closed and not checked.
Not checked, yes. And when you then did your rounds of the relevant building, whether it's Grenfell Tower or Whitstable House, for the purposes of your FRAs, did you go to the flats or try to go to the flats to check the door closers for yourself?
I would try and check as many as I could. Whether I had this document or not, I would try and check as many doors as I could.
Indeed, but would it not have been useful for you to have this document in your hand when going around the building so that you could make a note or point of going to flat 134 and attempting to get access to the flat to see whether the door closer was working or not?
Correct. If I had this document or was provided, it's the same as all the other documents.
Do you remember any occasion when you toured Grenfell Tower with a document such as this in your hands, identifying which flats had door closers which had not been checked by LHC?
No.
No. Do you accept this, that if your FRAs had identified no problems with self-closing devices and no problems with the internal elements of flat entrance doors, that the consequence would be or might be that your FRAs might be relied on as evidence that there were no problems with self-closing devices?
Yes, I accept that. But as I said, isn't it the TMO's policy that if there is a problem with the door, the resident should inform the TMO, and the caretakers actually undertake regular inspections of doors anyway? So my FRA is only a snapshot in time at this time, I believe, every 3 or 4 years, where they're in the building on a daily basis.
Let's look at your 2014 FRA. Well, before I ask you that, can I just ask you, to the best of your recollection, did you ever identify yourself a fault with a self-closing device on any door of any flat to which you did obtain access?
I'm going to say yes, because I would have come across one in the tower or anywhere else. Oh, yes.
You did. And what would you do, having discovered that? Would you note that down in your FRA?
On the significant findings.
On the significant findings. Would you do that as a matter of course?
Yes.
So can we take it that the specific instances of specific flats where door closers were found by you to be defective are identified in your significant findings, and where your significant findings are silent, it's because you found none?
Correct.
Yes, I see. Now, if we can look, please, at your 2014 FRA, it's at CST 403157. And if we look, please, at page 19, this starts on page 18. Let's have that up to start with, please, which is the beginning of the section. This is means of escape from fire. And if we turn to page 19, you can see the fourth from last tick box. The fourth from bottom, it's now towards the top of your screen. It says, where appropriate, are any fire doors fitted with self-closing devices and do these function correctly? And you've ticked no. You see that?
Correct. Yes.
Now, to be clear, was that in relation to flat entrance doors or the doors in the stairwell?
Any fire door.
Including flat entrance doors, yes?
Yes.
Why did you mark here that those were not functioning correctly? Those self-closing devices were either not fitted or not functioning correctly?
Because there was some that were defective.
Right.
The question is, where appropriate, are any fire doors fitted with self-closing devices and do these function correctly? Well, there is obviously somewhere I have found a fire door where the self-closing device is not functioning correctly, so tick no.
I see. So that's both fire doors and in the protected stairway. or rather between the protective stairway and the communal area, and flat entrance doors.
And fire doors on any other corridor anywhere else in the building that has a self-closing device.
I see. Then let's see if we can just trace this down into your significant findings schedule, just to be clear. If you go to CST 403177, please. And go to page 4. You'll see in there, item 12, you can see that on page 4, this is all about the access doors. Yes?
Fire doors.
Fire doors. Yeah. Yes. Under B, it's the access door to the external roof, and then C, cupboards. D, fire door to the refuse chute. You see that?
Yes.
And then E, fire door to the staircase from the lift.
Yes.
Lift lobby areas. So that's all those. And then if you turn to page 5, you can see in something not marked in red, but just for your information, the following flat entrance doors are the original fire-rated flat entrance doors and which were fitted with a self-closing device. These are flush solid doors and are all close fitting. And then you give a list of flats.
Correct.
That list is not a list of flats where the self-closing device was either missing or defective, is it?
No, this is just a statement.
Yeah.
I'm looking at 2014.
Yes, you are. So, on that basis, can we take it that the no-tick box, which we saw, related to non-flat entrance doors? In other words, fire door to the
Refuse chute room,
to the refuse chute, for example. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I see. This list we're looking at in the For Your Information box, was that list derived from specific inspection by you?
Looking at this and looking at the time, as in the date, I am going to say that these are leaseholder doors or doors in the building that have not been replaced with the new master doors. And therefore, I'm just, for your information, if any of these flat entrance doors are replaced in the future, their replacement door must comply with all requirements of the building regulations when installed.
Right. When you said that they were fitted with a self-closing device, where did you get that information from?
Well, I would have checked one of the doors.
So did you check each of these flats?
Well, I can't say I checked every one of them, but I would have checked a sample, and if they're all the same doors, which were the original doors, they would have had a self-closing device.
Well, this is my question, you see. Just on that, are you working on the basis that because these particular flats are flats with entrance doors that were not replaced in the programme, but which were the original fire-rated flat entrance doors, you're assuming that they were fitted with a self-closing device? Or did you actually inspect each one to ensure that the self-closing device was present and working on each flat front door?
I would have checked originally and made the assumption that as they were the original doors and fitted with them, they all still had them and they all still worked.
Now, can we then look at 2016? Do you remember that in July 2015 you were emailed about flat 45 of Grenfell Tower where there'd been an incident? Do you remember that? No. Well, I'll show you an email. It's CST 402919. And if you go to page 2, this is where we start. There's a bit of a run-up to this. there is an email on the bottom part of your screen from Glenn Duggan of the Metropolitan Police to Janice Jones, and he says, Jan, yesterday I visited 45 Grenfell Tower. I examined the front door, which appears to be a Sure Door SG34 composite door fitted with a Winkhouse hook lock multi-point locking system. However, I note a number of issues with the door set, details of which are highlighted in the attached document. Of particular concern is the glazing and the locking mechanism. The inner glazing appears to be Pilkington Georgian wired safety glass, possibly toughened, but I cannot tell whether the outer panel is laminated. Can you get confirmation of the glass specification, depending on which I might need to add additional security to the glass? According to Gloria, Alba's sister, there's a problem with the locking system which is causing the upper hook to catch on the lock housing. I noticed that it was not sitting centrally within the lock. I assume a new door closer will be fitted. To add security to the door, my view would be to add a fireproof letter bag. Can you find out the answers to my queries so I can finalise my specification? And if you go to page 1, you can see that Adrian Bowman forwards this to you on page 1. And then if you go to page 1, we can see your full response. And it says, the first attachment, this is 22nd of July 2015. Adrian, the first attachment is the master door information sheet. As you can see, the doors are police preferred specifications secured by design. From the photo you've attached, this door will be code SG34, a self-closing 30-minute fire-rated door, with the glazing also 30-minute fire-rated. This door would have been signed off. This door would have been signed off by LHC on installation. Please see the second attachment for the door type, and the third attachment as an example of the independent inspector checking each installed door. I do not have the document for 45 Grenfell Tower. This attachment is for some other flat doors in Grenfell Tower. According to the photos and the police officer, the door is now damaged. Do you want me to look at this flat entrance door next time I'm in the area? I'm also concerned that the occupants have put additional locks on the door. This was a fire-rated door. It now might not be, because the occupants have undertaken work on the door. Also, who removed the self-closing device? The door is now not a compliant door, as the self-closing device is missing. Additional features cannot just be added to this flat entrance door. A fireproof letter bag, any work must be undertaken by a competent contractor, as this is a composite factory manufactured and assembled door set, which comes as a complete unit, i.e. door and frame. So you were aware by this point, Mr. Stokes, that the front door to flat 45 was damaged and had a missing self-closer and also additional locks. Yes?
Yes.
Yes. And in your view, from what we can see from this email, it was no longer compliant.
Correct.
Yes. Now, moving forward in the chronology, on Monday the 27th of July 2015, 5 days later, we know that you visited the flat to inspect the door. Let's look at CST 50932. This is a letter of advice to Janice Ray on the 28th of July, and you say, flat 45 Grenfell Tower, subject the flat entrance door, dear Janice. I looked at this flat entrance door yesterday, Monday the 27th July. The occupant allowed me to inspect this flat entrance door from both sides of the door. Please see the photograph of this flat entrance door below. This is one of the certified fire-rated doors fitted by Master Door as part of the flat entrance door replacement programme. The glazing in the door's fan light area is Georgian wired fire-rated glazing on the inner face. When I inspected this door yesterday, the door lock is slightly out of alignment. It appears that when whoever attempted to force open this door, that some slight damage has occurred. I noted that the concealed self-closing device is missing from this door. 2 additional bolts have been fitted to the rear of the door, and the inner part of the letterbox is missing. Please see the relevant photographs below. There's no damage to the door's surface and no holes, etc., in the door's face/surface. And you attach a photograph. That's at page 4 of this document. Can we just look at that? Yes, there it is. And could you just describe for the chairman and panel, please, what we're looking at?
A concealed self-closing device.
Right. And then if we go back to the letter on page 1, last paragraph, we can see your conclusion. You say, I believe that this door is still fully functional as a fire-rated door, but adjustments should be made to the door so that the lock aligns correctly and a new inner part of the letterbox should be fitted or the letterbox replaced. The police officer's report indicates they recommended that a fire-rated letter bag is fitted on the inner face of the door. This could be fitted at the same time as or in replace of the existing letterbox. I would recommend that the door manufacturers are consulted regarding the fitting of any items or of additional door furniture to this certified fire-rated door. This is in case any work undertaken on or to the door by non-qualified persons or additional features fixed to the door invalidates any fire-rated certification of the door. Now, you note here that the self-closing device was missing, and we've seen the photograph. If the door did not have a self-closing device, why did you conclude that the door was a fully functional fire-rated door?
Is there not anything else after this that says fix the self-closing device?
Well, we can scroll down to page 2. I've read you, I think, all the letter, actually. We'd look at page 2 to see what is not there. It just ends. Please feel free to contact me if you require any further assistance. Yours faithfully, Carl Stokes, and then you can see the first of the photographs underneath it. So, question again. Given that the door was lacking a self-closing device, why did you conclude that the door was a fully functional fire-rated door?
Because I cannot answer that question in as much as that I can answer the question in as much as the door is not damaged, but I would have had that conversation that the self-closer should have been refitted back. That might have been a telephone call, or I might have been told that the self-closer was already being in process of being refitted back.
But it wasn't fully functional as a fire-rated door, was it?
But if I'd already been told that it was in hand to have a self-closer refitted to it, I can't answer the question what you're asking me.
Well,
all I can say is I would have not said don't fit a self-closing device. What did I have additional information that said that it was already in hand to repair the self-closing device, but I haven't put that in the letter. I would not have left it the way it is.
Well, just looking at your words in the first sentence of your conclusion, where you say, this door is still fully functional as a fire-rated door. Now, at that time, it didn't have a self-closer on it, so it wasn't fully functional as a fire-rated door, was it?
Correct.
And therefore, your advice is incorrect.
My advice in here is correct, but I do not. Looking back now from however many years ago, was there a self-closing? I would not have not said do not fit a self-closing device. I note that concealed self-closing device is missing on the door. Conclusion: the door is still fully functional, but I might have been told already that there is in hand a repair to be the door to be fitted with a self-closing device.
But we don't see that qualification on the face.
We don't,
of the letter. No. Therefore, on its face, the advice is incorrect, isn't it?
Looking at that letter, but without the additional information or context, I can't think back this long ago.
Let's look a bit later on in the year, December 2015. Can we go to TMO 008599693, please? Page 1. This is an email. If we go down the screen to the bottom there, from Janice Ray to Siobhan Rumble on the 17th of December 2015, and she says this: our fire risk assessor has raised his concern that in conversation with a few of the tenants at Grenfell Tower, they've advised that Seamus had disconnected the self-closers on their flat entrance door. In at least one of these cases, this was said to be due to the tenant perpetually locking himself out of his flat. It is imperative that these fire doors are self-closing. So I would be grateful if you could please impress this upon Seamus and insist that he refrains from disconnecting or removing any other self-closing devices. Any queries, please advise. Thanks, Janice. Just to complete the run, if you go to the top, please, of page 1 of this email string, you'll see that Siobhan Rumble comes back to Janice Ray a few days later on the 21st of December 2015 and says, told him. Now, it looks from the email we've just looked at from Janice Ray to Siobhan Rumble that you, as the fire risk assessor, were the person who had raised the concern about Seamus disconnecting self-closing doors. Is that right?
Correct.
Yes. So can we take it then that at this point in time, or by this point in time, mid-December 2015, you were aware that Seamus Dunley was disconnecting or removing self-closing devices for some of the Grenfell Tower tenants' front doors?
That's what it looks like, yes.
Yes. And it's quite clear, isn't it, I think, that Janice Ray says that you were told about the disconnected self-closing devices during conversations that you had had with a few of the tenants in the building.
Correct.
Yes. Do you remember how many people you spoke to?
No.
Do you remember? I don't imagine you remember who you spoke to. No. Do you remember how many flats were affected, roughly?
No.
Did you take down any flat numbers?
It depends where the conversation, because I wouldn't. This is not a time as an FRA, so I would have been there for some other reason.
Well, that's another question. Why might you have been there?
I would only have gone there if I'd have been instructed to go there for some other reason.
Do you remember what that was?
No.
Nonetheless, do you remember why you didn't take the flat numbers down, given that a few of the tenants had told you that Seamus had disconnected their self-closing devices?
I can't answer that as an honest answer, but if the conversation was, my flat entrance door has been disconnected, what's your flat name, what's your number? Oh, look, I just want to tell you that it's been disconnected. As soon as I found out, I informed Janice Ray immediately. Right. To get the situation resolved, because you cannot not have the self-closing devices fitted.
No. I mean, are you able to shed any light on the circumstances in which gave rise to you alerting Janice Ray to the concern as she's expressed here?
Well, I'm looking at the date here, just before Christmas in 2015. Was I there for some other reason that Janice had asked me to go there for? Or TMO had asked me to go there for? And this was just a side product or side issue that was raised to me at the time, and I dealt with it immediately that I knew about it.
Now, Seamus Dunley has provided a witness statement to the police. Let's look at that. It is MET 3019959. I'll just show you the first page of it. You can just go back to page 1 so that we can see what we're looking at. And there it is. It's a statement he gave to the police on the 6th of July 2018. And can we go to page 6, third paragraph? And on that page, in the third paragraph, he says, just after the warranty ran out, the doors started going wrong. They had internal door closers that were pulling out from the door because they had tiny little screws holding them in, and they had a massive fat spring inside. The door had a hole drilled into it, had an enclosed spring that went into the door, and would have a chain which attached to the frame. The springs were quite big, and the screws that were holding them in were too small. Some of the screws were pulling out of the door, and some were pulling out of the frame. If it's coming out of the frame or the door, the chain goes round, you can't shut the door, you can't reattach it because of the fixings, so I would have no alternative but to remove it. I think I did this to about 10 doors. One of the door closers that I took off, I'll come on to that in a moment, just pausing there. Did you ever meet Seamus Dunley?
I must have done.
Right. Before December 2015, did he ever tell you about these problems with these self-closing devices? Do you remember?
No, I wouldn't have thought he would have told me.
Right. So your information about these self-closers came not from him, you think, possibly, but from the tenants?
Yes, well, I think it's what it says in my letter from the tenants.
Were you aware that, as Seamus Dunley has said here in his statement, he thinks he removed the self-closing devices from about 10 flat doors?
Only for my letter to Janice Ray, which is the tenants that told me. I
Right.
would not know the numbers.
Do you know if Siobhan Rumble did actually tell Seamus Dunley to stop disconnecting or removing them?
I would have no idea.
Do you know what steps Janice Ray or anybody else at the TMO did take or was going to take to reinstate the self-closing devices on the doors where Seamus Dunley had removed them?
No, but I made it quite plain in my letter that they must have them fitted, so I would like to think that they would have undertaken repairs.
Having been told what you were told by the tenants as reflected in Janice Ray's email to Siobhan Rumble, did you follow up on that to make sure that the cure, the remedy, had taken place?
I would have taken it on if Janice's word that had been rectified, and on my next FRA, I would have gone around the building and checked doors.
Right, because the advice to Seamus Dunley seems to have been that he should stop removing them. Did you ever get any information that they had also been repaired, rectified?
No.
You never no one told you that? Right. Now, can we then look at the 2016 FRA, 26th of April 2016? And go to CST 403161, please. And this is page 8 in there. Can we see? This is the FRA. And under any other relevant information on this premises towards the top of your screen, it says, the TMO tenanted flats in this building
I'm
have
sorry, Mr. Millett, I think we've got the wrong bit.
right, yes, it in fact appears twice.
Well,
Yes, you want the first one.
the first one. Yeah.
It says, the TMO tenanted flats in this building have been fitted with the new flat entrance door sets as part of a larger door replacement programme undertaken by the TMO. These new door sets for the tenanted flats have 30-minute certified fire-rated self-closing doors which meet the requirements of the building regulations. That's the same information that you had previously included within Section 12 of your 2012 and 2014 FRAs for Grenfell Tower, isn't it?
It looks similar, yes.
Yes. Do you know why that information was in a separate or additional section?
No, it might have been that because more and more... Sorry, what date was this?
This is April 2016.
So as more... I've taken it out of Section 12, put it into this, because it's now applicable to virtually all the buildings that had the door replacement programme, so it was in the same place in all of them.
This information was now 4 or 5 years old, wasn't it?
Yes.
Why were you still describing the doors as new flat entrance doors?
Rather than the old original ones.
Well, they weren't new, were they? They were now 4 or 5 years old.
I live near Oxford. New college in Oxford was built in 16-something.
Well,
13-something, I think.
Sorry, yeah.
Whatever. The fact is that those flat entrance doors were not newly refitted, or not newly fitted, but had been in place for some years. And the importance of that, it's not a trivial point, Mr. Stokes. The reason I'm asking you that is because this is essentially cut and pasted from earlier FRAs, but the doors have got older and older, and therefore more and more liable to damage or replacement of the door closers.
But it says the tenanted flats in this building have been fitted with new. So they were new to those flats and they were new doors.
Yeah.
To make a difference between the old doors, which were the original doors.
Now, if we go to page 20, we can see in section 12, which starts on page 19, we don't need to go back to it, you've ticked yes in both the box about dwelling entrance doors and the box about self-closing devices, haven't you?
Which question, please?
In the middle of the column, do the dwelling entrance doors appear to be fire-rated? Tick, yes. And then 2 below that, where appropriate, are any fire doors fitted with self-closing devices and do these function correctly? Tick.
Correct.
Yes. And if we turn to page 21, means of escape, third paragraph down, it says the tenanted apartments. Do you see that? It's just 5 lines down.
Yes.
The tenanted apartments within this building had a few years ago their flat entrance doors replaced with new door sets. These door sets are self-closing 30-minute certified fire-rated doors, which meet the requirements of the building regulations. If there's glazing in the new doors, is fire-rated. The letterbox on these new doors is fire-rated, and cold smoke seals are fitted as standard. There's a level threshold for compliance with Part M of the building regulations. A key is not needed to open these new flat entrance doors from the internal face of the door, again complying with building regulation requirements. Information on these new doors, which also have acoustic, safety and security properties past 23 and 24, as well as fire, along with the fire certification documentation, is held at the hub in the TMO offices. Now, here you have referred to them as being replaced a few years ago, but otherwise, am I right in thinking that this paragraph is identical or substantially similar, at least, to the ones we've seen before in earlier FRAs?
Correct.
And again, there's no suggestion here of individual sample checks that you've done on any of the flats, is there?
No.
No. Do you recall whether on your visit for the April 2016 FRA you managed to get access to any flats to look at any self-closers or any other aspect of the door?
I'm going to say I would have done, because it was standard that I would have tried at least and got access to a few.
Right.
There was the newer, I believe, the standard required, or the standards of the time this was written, you didn't have to note it down. I believe the new PAS 79 actually does say you should note down which doors and how many.
Now, at this time, this is April 2016. It's only a few months after the December 2015 exchange that you'd had about Seamus Dunley removing some of the door closers in Grenfell Tower. Did you make any effort at this point, when preparing this FRA, to discover which flats had had their door closers removed by Seamus Dunley, to make sure that they had new door closers on them?
Not individual flats, but I would have asked the question, because it would have been a question that would have come up.
Well, we've seen nothing in this FRA about that.
No, correct.
Why is that?
It's not written down.
Well, I know it's not written down, but that's why I'm asking you, why is it not written down? When I say it, let me be clearer. Why have you not recorded the fact in this FRA that a number of self-closing devices on flat front doors in Grenfell Tower had been removed by the TMO?
I can't answer that question. As I walked around the building, I found none that were missing. It's a snapshot, my snapshot in time of what I found on the day.
Why did you not go around the building, trying so far as you could to check the flats which had self-closing devices which Seamus Dunley had removed?
I wouldn't know which flats they were.
Well, why did you not make all attempts to find out which they were by asking the TMO?
That I reported it back to the TMO, and as far as I was concerned, that it was an internal house something for the TMO to fix their own in with their maintenance department. Unless I was given information to the contrary, I would expect that work to have been undertaken.
So you worked on the assumption, but you were on notice, weren't you, that there were a number of flat front doors which had had the self-closing devices removed by the TMO's own operative. Given that you were on notice of that, why didn't you take the opportunity only a few months later to check to make sure, so far as you could, that those self-closing devices had been replaced?
But if I asked the question, that was what I was doing. Have they been replaced? If I asked the question, I am taking it on good advice, the answer I'm given back.
We see no record of you writing to Janice Ray or Siobhan Rumble or anybody at the TMO saying, I was concerned that there'd been a number of self-closing devices removed. Can you please now assure me that they have all now been replaced? We've seen no record of that. Why is that?
Recorded that I had concerns when I found out they'd been removed. I then passed the issue back to the TMO to resolve that situation.
And you just assumed without checking that they'd resolved it, is that right?
It's the same as in my significant findings. If there was a door closer missing on a staircase and the next 4 years later when I went, it was repaired. I assume that it's fixed in the meantime.
Yeah, but this isn't 4 years. This is 3 months, 4 months at best.
Okay. The same applies.
Right. So you just left it to them, and unless you were told otherwise, you'd assumed everything had been fixed.
Yes.
Was that not a dangerous assumption to proceed on for a fire risk assessor who is on notice that the absence of these absolutely critical pieces of equipment are missing?
It is an assumption that I have made.
It's a dangerous assumption, is what I'm putting to you.
It's no more dangerous than I check it, and 2 days after I check it, it fails. I've got to rely on the TMO when I provide them with information that they act on that information.
Now, if we go to the same set of text, below, or it's about 3/5 of the way down your screen, it says, the original flat entrance doors in this building. Do you see?
Yes.
If we can scroll just a little bit up, we can see more of the text. It says the original flat entrance doors in this building are flat numbers 56, 61, 86, 92, 105, etc. Running down to 206. You see that?
Yes. It was on.
Yes, I know. There it is. It's in the middle of your screen now, firmly. And it goes on to say, it's the TMO's policy that if flats are refurbished or when new tenants move into a flat, then the self-closing device fitted to the flat entrance door is accessed. If the self-closing device does not close the door fully or one is not fitted to the door, then a new appropriate self-closing device is fitted. Some of the original flat entrance doors have more than one lock fitted to them. It's assumed that the occupants of these flats can exit the flat in an emergency without any undue delay. Can you explain, what do you mean, if the policy, if flats are refurbished or when new tenants move into a flat, then the self-closing device is accessed? What do you mean by that?
It is part of the refurbishment of the flat that they make certain that the self-closing device works correctly on the door.
Right.
Probably access is probably the wrong word to use, but in here, the policy refurbished or new tenants moved in, it means someone actually goes and checks that the flat entrance door self-closing device works correctly.
Oh, I see. Did you mean assessed rather than
Assessed,
accessed?
yes.
Oh, I see. Right. It's
Apologies, typo.
There's a typo. Oh, that's all right. No, that's just clear. Now, did that apply? Did that policy apply, did you think, to the 16 original flat entrance doors which you've listed in that paragraph?
I'm going to say no, because those 16 are leaseholder doors.
So your understanding of the policy that you've set out there didn't apply to leaseholders?
So
doors.
the TMO's policy is they refurbished, so that would only be under tenanted control. New tenants would move in, tenanted control. If they're leaseholders, they can't change their door without going to the TMO anyway, and building regulations, because it's a building regulations requirement.
Right. Are you saying here that these 16 flats haven't been assessed to make sure that they've got working door closers?
These are the original ones, and I would have checked them initially, or a sample initially, and my assumption is they still should have them in working order, but because they're leaseholders, it's hard for the TMO to actually access them.
Is what I'm really trying to do is work out the connection between the first sentence, which lists these 16 flats, and the second sentence, which refers to the TMO policy, which seems to apply to tenants.
No, sorry, it's a full stop. It could have been on the next line, I think.
And the original flat entrance doors are all leaseholders. What are we supposed to read into that about whether or not they do have self-closing devices?
I think it's elsewhere in the document. I think it's just a statement of fact. That was a sentence with those. These are the original doors.
Right. Okay. When you talk of the policy, the TMO's policy, that if flats are refurbished or when new tenants move into a flat, then the self-closing device fitted to the flat entrance door is assessed. What are you referring to? A written policy?
Over the time, yes, that was the written policy that was going through at that time.
That was going through at that time. Had it been formalised and finalised?
I can't say internally whether it had been finalised. That's the information I was given, that the policy was to be adopted or was being adopted.
Right. You say that was the information I was given. Were you given a document?
I think this was discussed on more than one occasion on how is the best way to
I see.
access doors, make certain self-closers were there, do inspections of doors, what was the programme, etc., etc.
Can you explain why this policy only makes its first appearance in this FRA, 26th of April,
Because
2016?
this was ongoing, so this policy would have been new.
Right, I was going to say, it's something that's recently been agreed or at least understood by you. Is that right?
Correct.
Was it something on which you had provided advice to Janice Ray?
I'm going to say yes.
You're going to say yes. Do you remember or not?
Yes, I mean, she would have asked me and I would have provided some information.
Right. Do you remember whether the LFB had any input into that policy from the best of your recollection?
I'm going to say yes, because I know it was an agenda item on her meetings with the LFB on more than one occasion. And also it was a meeting was had with the LFB, including legal from RBKC TMO, about leaseholder doors, etc., and self-closers on doors.
Right. Mr. Chairman, it's 1 o'clock. I'm mid-topic, really, but we're going to go to a different...
Sounds that the topic might take a little while to complete, is that right?
Well, I think that, yes, we go to another document, but
So I think possibly we should break at that
think we
point. Yes. Right, Mr. Stokes, we're going to break at that point so we can all get some lunch. We'll resume, please, at 2 o'clock. And again, I have to ask you not to talk to anyone about your evidence or anything relating to it over the break. All right?
Okay, sir.
Thank you very much. I'd like
sir.
to go to the usher, please. Thank you. 2 o'clock, then, please.